Hello, friends, and welcome to Jewels of Truth. My name is Daniel Fontenot, and today we will continue to study the book of Daniel, chapter 10. We have been studying the subject of Daniel's last vision, and in this beginning of the vision, the first thing he beholds is Christ in His glory, in particular His incarnation. The fact that, and the truth that Christ, divinity was combined with humanity. Christ took upon Himself our sinful human nature. Does it mean that He was sinful? Some people misunderstand that. But, if you're going to accuse me or anyone else for saying what I just said, then you need to wrap your minds around Romans chapter 8, where Paul the Apostle in chapter 8 of Romans says, "For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending His own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh." Why? Why did He do that? That the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Christ was tempted in all points like as we are, yet without sin. And how could He be tempted in all points like as we are if He had not taken upon Himself our sinful human flesh? He did not sin, never did. He was perfect in all things. But let's go on. We're going to go back and read Daniel chapter 10, this time verses 1 through 8. So the question for us to consider is, will we hide from Christ's glory? Daniel chapter 10 verses 1 through 8 tells us, "In the 3rd year of Cyrus king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. And the thing was true, but the time appointed was long. And he understood the thing, and had understanding of the vision. In those days I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth. Neither did I anoint myself at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. And in the 24th day of the 1st month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hiddekel, then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone, and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength." So if you remember the last time, in the last study, we discussed what did it mean for that certain man to be clothed in linen. And that certain man is Jesus Christ, the Son of Man and the Son of God. And He clothed Himself with humanity, linen representing humanity. If you haven't watched that presentation, you need to go back and watch that one first. And that one was entitled Daniel's Vision of the Incarnation of Christ. Now, I'm going to take 1 or 2 statements from the previous study and put them here before we go on. We want to look at this again. As in the typical service, the high priest laid aside his pontifical robes and officiated in the white linen dress of an ordinary priest, so when you see the word "so," anybody that's saying "so," they're comparing 2 things. So Christ laid aside his royal robes and garbed himself with humanity and offered sacrifice, himself the priest, himself the victim. So the white linen dress of an ordinary priest represents humanity. So linen in Daniel 10 and verse 5 represents humanity. And that was from Acts of the Apostles, page 33. In addition to that, I want to emphasize that when Daniel saw Christ clothed in linen, he was viewing Christ's character. So we have here Testimonies for the Church, volume 5, page 422. We'll read only the bold. The majesty of heaven clothed himself with the humility of a child. This is the character of Christ. We could easily add to that Moses, when God came down and revealed to Moses his name. He spoke his name to Moses. He showed him his glory because Moses asked him, "Show me thy glory," and that's what God did. Jesus Christ came down and revealed to Moses his name, his glory. The glory and the character of Christ are the same. So, Daniel was viewing the character of Christ here, essentially. So Isaiah had a similar experience and view. In Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 to 13, it says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. And one cried unto another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." What does this mean? Yes, it's pointing to Revelation 18. Okay? Revelation 18 and verse 1. "And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory." This is a deep subject. And it includes the light that God is sending his people, the advanced truths, but also the glory of Christ being revealed in his people. So when it says the earth is full of his glory, this is the light which God is causing to shine upon his people, and they are reflecting that light in their characters. "And the post of the door moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips." He's having the same experience as Daniel did. "And I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." Remember there in Daniel chapter 10, we just read it just a moment ago, when Daniel saw Christ in his glory, it says that there remained no strength in him, and his comeliness was turned into corruption, and I retained no strength. We'll discuss that in a more further in a future presentation. So it continues. "Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar. And he laid it upon my mouth, and said, Lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. And he said, Go and tell this people, Hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert, and be healed. Then said I, Lord, how long? And he answered, Until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without man, and the land be utterly desolate, and the Lord have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. But yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return and shall be eaten, as a teil tree, and as an oak, whose substance is in them. When they cast their leaves, so the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. So, in Review and Herald, May 3rd, 1887, the servant of the Lord tells us Isaiah had a message from God, from the God of heaven, to give to the backsliding people of Israel, and he gave them this message. Okay? Daniel has a message for God's people. Actually for the whole world, but primarily for his people. We'll bring it out further here later in this study. Daniel had a message to give to God's people, to the backsliding people of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Okay? But before giving that message, God's people have to have the experience that Daniel and Isaiah had. All of us who understand these things need the experience which Daniel and Isaiah, and as we shall see, Moses had, before we give the last warning message to a dying world. He knew what elements he had to deal with. He knew the stubbornness and perversity of the heart, and how hard it would be to make any impression upon them. As he stood in the portico of the temple, the Lord revealed himself to him. The veil of the temple was withdrawn, the door lifted, and he had a view of the Holy of Holies within the veil. He saw the God of Israel before the throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his glory filled the temple. As Isaiah senses his own sinfulness, he cries out, I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. And there was seen the hand that took the live coal from off the altar and touched his lips and made him be clean. Then he was ready to go with the message. And he said, Send me, for he knew that the Spirit of God would be with the message. To those who are engaged in the work of God, in the conversion of souls, it would seem as though it was impossible to reach the obdurate heart. This is how Isaiah felt. But when he saw that there was a God above the cherubim, and that they were ready to work with God, he was ready to carry the message. And again, that's Review and Herald, May 3rd, 1887. Same thing with Moses. Exodus 3, 1 through 14. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert, and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush, and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of that land into a good land, and a large unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto God, Who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee, that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain. And Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, The God of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. Okay. First of all, go back in these verses and look at that word sight. I forgot what verse it's at, but because I took out all the verse numbers in this passage. But it's going to be about, but you see it there in the passage. It says, Moses said, And I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. That word sight, it's the very same word. Well, okay, let's just read the definition. Among other words, it means a view, also an appearance, the thing seen, a shape, especially if handsome, comeliness, a vision, mental vision, apparently, appearance, as soon as beautiful, countenance, fair, favored, form, goodly, to look upon, a pattern, visage, sight. Okay? So the word sight there in Exodus 3:3 is the very same Hebrew word as vision in Daniel chapter 10 and verse 1. And the appearance, and the word appearance in Daniel 10 verses 6 and 18. It is the very same Hebrew word. So that's telling us, among other things, that Moses is viewing this, he's having the same vision, figuratively speaking, as what Daniel did. And how do we know that beyond just the definition of the word? Well, notice here this passage from, actually, I think I put the entire article in here because it was so wonderful. From the Use Instructor, December 20th, 1900. Let's read that and comment upon it. Mr. White tells us, it will baffle the keenest intellect to interpret the divine manifestation of the burning bush. Yes, it will baffle the keenest intellect to interpret the divine manifestation of the burning bush. And I believe the same applies for Daniel chapter 10 and Isaiah chapter 6 and probably a lot of other scriptures. It was not a dream. It was not a vision. It was a living reality, something that Moses saw with his eyes. He heard the voice of God calling to him out of the bush, and he covered his face, realizing that he stood in the immediate presence of God. God was conversing with humanity. Never could Moses describe the impression made upon his mind by the sight he then saw, and by the sound of the voice that spoke to him. But this impression was never effaced. Heaven came very near to him as, with reverent awe, he listened to the words, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. What wondrous condescension for God to leave the heavenly courts and manifest himself to Moses, talking with him face to face as a man speaketh unto his friend. This lesson contains instruction that is profitable for all. Notice, here is revealed a symbol radiant with the glory of Christ, the great teacher. the symbol chosen for the representation of the deity was not a cedar of Lebanon, but a lowly bush that seemingly had no attractions. This enshrined the infinite. The all-merciful God shrouded his glory in a most humble type that Moses might look upon it and live. Can we see this is the same as the man or the vision that Daniel saw? The certain man clothed in linen, Christ taking upon himself humanity. God, because Christ, Jesus Christ, the Son of the infinite God, God himself, took upon himself sinful human flesh, or as John the Revelator tells us in the Gospel of John, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. The Word was made flesh so that we could see him and not die. God declared, "Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live." And she's quoting there from Exodus 33. When Moses asked God to show him his glory. All the manifestations of God's glory have been shrouded that man might behold it and not be consumed. Veiled in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, God could honor finite man by communicating to him his will and imparting to him his grace. God's glory must be subdued in a white linen dress, his majesty veiled that the weak vision of finite man may look upon it. This symbol, obscuring the manifestation of God's glory, foreshadowed Christ's appearance in our world, his divinity clothed with humanity. See, that vision that Moses saw there in Exodus chapter 3 was pointing us to the time when Christ would come, when he would appear in our world. It's his first advent, his divinity clothed with humanity. Surely, in the eyes of the world, Christ possessed no beauty that they should desire him. Yet, he was the incarnate God. This is the mystery of godliness. Human science, even though it be of the highest order, cannot explain it. Men may think that they possess superior qualities, represented by the noble oak or the stately cedar. Mark the humble birth of Christ, his condescending grace, his infinite humility, the depths to which he descended. He is the eternal Word, yet he was made flesh and dwelt among us. Before Christ came in the likeness of men, he existed in the express image of his Father. He thought it not robbery to be equal with God. Nevertheless, he voluntarily emptied himself and took the form of a servant. He was the incarnate God, the light of heaven and earth. In him are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Yet he was born in a stable in Bethlehem of Judea. He was the son of Mary, supposed to be the son of Joseph, and he grew up as any other child. His earthly life was one of self-denial and self-sacrifice. The foxes have holes, he said, and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath not where to lay his head. We see Jesus, writes Paul, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, should taste death for every man. Thus will the testimony appear in clear lines in that day when all must hear the final decision of a righteous judge, when every case will be decided, and every man rewarded according to his works. The loyal and believing children of God will then be separated from the children of the wicked one, as the sheep are divided from the goats. The righteous will be placed on the right hand of God, while the transgressors will be placed on his left hand. Prophecy foretold that Christ was to appear as a root out of a dry ground. She's quoting here from Isaiah 53. He hath no form nor comeliness, wrote Isaiah, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Can we not see that in Daniel chapter 10 is Isaiah 53? This chapter should be studied. It presents Christ as a Lamb of God. Those who are lifted up with pride, whose souls are filled with vanity, should look upon this picture of their Redeemer and humble themselves in the dust, as Daniel was. The entire chapter should be committed to memory. Its influence will subdue and humble the soul defiled by sin and uplifted by self-exaltation. Think of Christ's humiliation. He took upon himself fallen, suffering, human nature degraded and defiled by sin. He took our sorrows, bearing our grief and shame. He endured all the temptations wherewith man is beset. He united humanity with divinity. A divine spirit dwelt in a temple of flesh. He united himself with the temple. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, because by so doing he could associate with the sinful, sorrowing sons and daughters of Adam. The glory of Christ was veiled, that the majesty and beauty of his outward form might not become an object of attraction. In this is a lesson for all humanity. Verily, man at his best is altogether vanity. Christ came with no outward display. Finding himself in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, showing that fallen man must ever walk humbly before God. Riches, worldly honor, human greatness can never save a soul from death. To this man will I look, declares the Lord, even to him that is poor and of a contrite spirit, and trembleth at my word. So note, Isaiah, Daniel, and Moses represent God's people at the end of the world, who need a view of the incarnation of Christ before giving the last warning message to the world. That view of Christ's incarnation, which is God's character, humbles God's people in the dust. Are we willing to be humbled in the dust? When God's people are humbled in the dust, they are prepared to give the last warning message. In Daniel's last vision, which includes chapters 10 through 12, the last warning message is contained in chapter 11. And that last warning message is contained in chapter 11. But some flee to hide themselves from the view of Christ's incarnation and glory. They are blind to it. Notice Daniel 10, 7 through 11. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. For the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard the voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in a deep sleep on my face, and my face toward the ground. And behold, an hand touched me, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. So the men didn't see the vision. The men who didn't see the vision, and who had a great quaking fall upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves, they represent those at the end of the world who reject the preparation necessary for the giving of the last warning message. They are spiritually blind. That preparation cannot be obtained while retaining a false view of the nature of Christ. That may be some hard words, some hard speech for some people. There are some, not just among the liberals in Adventism, but apparently even among the conservatives of Adventism, who have a skewed understanding of the nature of Christ. And if you have a messed up understanding of the nature of Christ, if you believe that Christ came in the likeness of Adam's flesh before the fall, you cannot gain that preparation to give the last warning message. You just can't. So the word quaking there means fear, anxiety, care, exceedingly, fear, quaking, trembling. Okay? We're talking here about the shaking. Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1, page 184. Notice this. I asked the meaning of the shaking I had seen. I was shown that it would be caused by the straight testimony called forth by the counsel of the true witness to the Laodiceans. It will have its effect upon the heart of the receiver of the testimony, and it will lead him to exalt the standard and pour forth the straight testimony. This straight testimony some will not bear. Some will rise up against it, and this will cause a shaking among God's people. Notice in Daniel 10 and verse 1, it says, Daniel says that the thing that was shown to him, he said the thing was true. The thing was true. And we have the testimony called forth by the counsel of the true witness to the Laodiceans. As I said, I think in my first presentation of Daniel chapter 10, the fact that it says the thing was true is pointing towards the message to the Laodiceans. This is a true message by the true witness. Okay? And this message, which is true, causes a shaking among God's people. Think about that one. This message of Daniel 10 and 11, which is true, is going to cause a shaking among Adventism, among Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists. And so that quaking, shaking was caused by the vision of Christ's incarnation, even though the vision was true. Now, the men that were with Daniel, they didn't see the vision. Well, this spiritually is compared with Matthew 13, 10 to 16. And the disciples came and said unto him, Why speakest thou unto them in parables? He answered and said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but unto them it is not given. It was given to Daniel to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but it was not given to the men that stood by him who fled after seeing the vision. They didn't see the vision. They were blind to it. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. Therefore speak I unto them in parables, because they, seeing, see not, and hearing, they hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. Remember, we read Isaiah 6 a while ago? Okay? Isaiah had the same experience, not only in viewing the glory of Christ and his incarnation, but also there were those, just like in Daniel chapter 10, who could not see. They were blind. By hearing ye shall hear and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. And when you think of that, you go to Matthew 13, where this is taken from. Yeah, we just read it there. This takes us back to Daniel 12:12. Daniel 12:12, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,335 days. And Ellen White comments upon that, as we know. Let's continue. So, Review and Herald, September 26, 1899. Did Christ blind the eyes so that the people could not discern? He gave them great light, and from time to time added to the light by the exposition of prophecy. What then eclipsed the light? The answer is given. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. Review and Herald, September 26, 1899. And I don't usually use devotionals in my notes, but I couldn't find this statement anywhere else. This is from the devotional This Day with God, page 361. It is the close connection with God which opens and makes quick and sharp the understanding. Men in Christ's day brought upon themselves that blindness, that in seeing they see not, and the willful deafness, that in hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. Jesus told them that there was no reason for them to be surprised at what he had stated in regard to their unbelief, for Isaiah had predicted the same. Some of the people professing to believe the truth for this time will be in a similar position. They will not understand the marvelous work of God by which God confirms his word. This is speaking about Daniel 10, brothers and sisters. They will not understand this is speaking about those men who fled from the vision to hide themselves. Some of the people professing to believe the truth for this time will be in a similar position as these men. They will not understand the marvelous work of God by which God confirms his word. They will not perceive that the work of God's Spirit is wrought by his power, not because the evidence is not sufficient, but because the waywardness and the corruption of their own hearts will not suffer them honestly and candidly to weigh these evidences, for the sins of the people have hardened their hearts, and their conformity to the world has clouded their conceptions of divine things. They are unwilling to be directed in the path of righteousness which would lead to the city of God. Okay? Notice, let me repeat. She says here, how does it say it here? It says, because of the waywardness of the corruption of their own hearts, will not suffer them honestly and candidly to weigh the evidences about any of these new truths. How many times have I heard of or spoken to people who are not willing to honestly and candidly weigh the evidences? I had a text conversation with a certain individual here about a week or so ago, and he just wanted to skirt the issues. He wanted to just turn away. Didn't want to honestly and candidly weigh the evidences. Why? Because the sins of the people have hardened their hearts, and their conformity to the world has clouded their conceptions of divine things. They are unwilling to be directed in the path of righteousness which would lead to the city of God. We'll end this presentation right there. I hope that this has caused God's people to think and to consider what God has in store for them if they will study God's Word, dig and plead with God to open His Word to them, to consider the condition of God's people. We are as a people, we are in a horrible condition, the worst we have ever been in since this church began. If you agree with this presentation, then by all means tap that like button so that it can be sent far and wide to those who are hungering for the bread of life. Have any questions or comments, place them at the bottom of this video. And if you haven't subscribed, we would highly encourage you to do so. Thank you, dear friends, for joining us here at Jewels of Truth. Have a good day in the Lord.